Hello, my name is Brandy Caldwell, and I'm going to be talking to you today about legal and ethical issues in education. The creators of this slideshow are myself, Brandy Caldwell, Emily Nash, and Lori Owens, all of which are students in the School of Education's Instructional Leadership Program. First, we're going to look at the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics. The definition is that the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics defines the professional behavior of educators in Alabama and serves as a guide to ethical conduct. This code protects the health, safety, and general welfare of students and educators. It outlines objective standards of conduct for professional educators and clearly defines actions of an unethical nature for which disciplinary sanctions are justified. You'll notice with each of these standards, there is a statement, and this statement usually starts with an educator should. So the first standard acknowledges professional conduct. Standard 2 deals with trustworthiness. Standard 3, unlawful acts. Standard 4, teacher-student relationships. And Standard 5, alcohol, drug, and tobacco use or possession. And so each of these have a statement associated with them. Finishing out the Code of Ethics is Standard 6, dealing with public funds and property. Standard 7, remunerative conduct. Standard 8, maintenance of confidentiality. And Standard 9, abandonment of contract. And so each of these are addressing the health and welfare of the student as well as protecting the educator, so that there is a statement there covering that action or code of conduct. Next topic is due process. All students have the right to due process as part of their 5th and 14th Amendment rights. And there are several items under this that are important. There's procedural due process, and that's a clear set of steps that are followed, allowing the students and parents a fair opportunity to address the allegations. And there's due process of law. So if there's a suspension or the necessity of law enforcement to become involved, they have to comply with due process provisions as well. There's substantive due process, and that ensures the fundamental fairness, and it safeguards students against inconsistency. There's the vagueness doctrine, and this says policies should be clearly written and communicated. And the presumption standard, which says students are presumed innocent unless factual evidence is presented. One of the most controversial parts of this ethical behaviors in the education is religion in public schools. There are some important amendments related to religion, the 14th, the 5th, and the connection there is that it means school officials may not infringe upon the rights of students by establishing a religious practice in public school. There are essential clauses in the First Amendment. One prohibits the state from passing laws to aid religion or show preference. And the next one, free exercise clause, prohibits the state from interfering with individual religious freedoms. The combination of these two requires state agencies to remain neutral. Some of the controversial topics regarding religion in public schools: there's prayer, Bible reading, financial aid provided to parochial schools, religious symbols, displays, and banners, and use of facilities. So each of these, you can see there are bullet points there addressing some of the topics that can be controversial. Others include religious activities and holiday programs, intelligent design and the theory of evolution, distribution of religious materials, and the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm sure that every school administrator has had to face some or even all of these topics in their administration. And this is just some bullet points addressing how each of these are important that you know what's right and wrong. And then the last one, they're religious freedoms involving teachers. They can't be denied employment because of their religious beliefs. They cannot exercise religious beliefs during school hours, and wearing of religious garb can be controversial. So that kind of leads into freedom of expression. So back to the First Amendment, this guarantees freedom of speech and expression, including that of public school students. They can use this freedom, but they cannot disrupt the educational process. Schools have the right to infringe upon the student right to freedom if it's proven that these rights interfere with the operation of school or the rights of others, and court decisions are a case-by-case basis. Protests and demonstrations are considered form of free expression, but they have to be peaceful. And you can see there they cannot include disrespect, destruction, violation. They can't obstruct hallways, and they can't stop the educational process. Also, another freedom of expression issue is censorship of student newspapers. School newspapers are a forum for students to express their ideas, and you cannot use broad censorship because it violates the speech rights of students. Some of those exceptions there is if there are items vulgar or offensive, and districts have to follow a process for censorship to occur. Next is search and seizure. This deals with the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, protection against unreasonable search and seizure. The biggest issue is to determine whether the search is reasonable. If you are determining if a search is reasonable, you have to have probable cause as to the violation of the law or the school rule. The types of searches, there's school property versus student property. So school property includes lockers, desks. There has to be reliable information leading to that belief of violation. There has to be a clear policy. And then student property, including book bags, cars, pants, pockets. This requires stronger evidence because the search is more intrusive. Some of the procedures, the student must be present, have to have a witness. There should be policies outlined for searches, and that information has to be transparent. And if law enforcement is there, a warrant is required in order for them to do the search. And next up, individuals with disabilities. So IDEA or IDEIA, this is the congressional act that outlines the responsibilities of schools in regards to students with disabilities. And it guarantees children ages 3 to 21 the right to free and appropriate education. And also Section 504 involves students with medical diagnoses requiring accommodations. All of these students will get an IEP or individualized education plan. It has to include current progress, annual goals, transition services, and it's got to have input from multiple sources, the special ed teacher, classroom teacher, parents, and school administrator. Students with disabilities have to have the least restrictive environment, and they have to be intermingled with their non-disabled peers. You cannot change that least restrictive environment without holding a review of the IEP. Discipline when it comes to students with disability is very significant because it has to be determined if the behavior that they're getting in trouble for was a manifestation of their disability. If it was, the student may not be punished. If it wasn't, they can receive punishment that would be equivalent to their non-disabled peers. It may require a behavior intervention plan, and it may require a reevaluation of the student's IEP. And liability and student records. So there is a law called the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA. It protects student confidentiality and aims to ensure personal information remains private. It requires parental consent for the release of information. Student records should be kept in an organized manner. There has to be information regarding discipline, including all of the facts. Any gossip regarding information gained about a student should be avoided. It's a violation, and records should be safe and secure. Finally, it's important to remember the district's legal counsel should always be consulted in the event of any controversial activity regarding these topics and any other educational topic in order to avoid the possibility of litigation. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope that this was a helpful presentation.